Death Valley is a place where beauty and danger are entwined like an unbreakable knot, resting on the border between California and Nevada. This national park holds several records, each a stark reminder of its unforgiving nature. It is the hottest, driest, and lowest national park in the United States. Situated in the heart of the Mojave Desert, temperatures here regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius, and in 1913, the highest temperature ever recorded on Earth, a blistering 56.7 degrees Celsius, was measured right here. Even during the relatively cooler month of April, the thermometer can climb well above 30 degrees Celsius. On this rugged land, one can find both the lowest point in North America, Badwater Basin, 86 meters below sea level, and towering mountain peaks that rise above 3,000 meters. These majestic gradients give birth to a maze of canyons and gorges, areas so treacherous that the unprepared traveler could easily vanish without a trace. Despite its dangers, thousands of tourists flock here each year, drawn to the golden sands of the dunes and the vibrant rocks of the canyons. Many venture far into the backcountry, where the lack of cell service and the vast emptiness could easily leave someone stranded for hours, even days before help could arrive. It was in this silent, dangerous beauty that a fateful story unfolded in April 2021, a story that would remind everyone once again why this place earned its ominous name, Death Valley. Alexander Lofen knew all too well what it was like to face challenges head-on. In 2011, he had served as a combat engineer in Afghanistan, gaining experience in extreme conditions and learning how to make split-second decisions in life-threatening situations. After 4 years of service and an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army, the 32-year-old veteran found a new purpose. He turned his focus to helping other service members. After earning a bachelor's degree in political science from Arizona State University, Alex began working in the office of Congressman Raul M. Grijalva as part of the Wounded Warrior Fellowship Program. His job was to support veterans in southern Arizona, working on a crisis hotline and providing assistance to those in dire situations. It was in Arizona that Alex met 27-year-old Emily H., who had come to the state through the AmeriCorps Vista program to work for a nonprofit organization that also helped veterans. It wasn't just their shared passion for helping others that brought them together but also a mutual love for traveling and exploring the great outdoors. With Alex's military background and love for nature, he quickly became Emily's trusted hiking partner. In early April 2021, the couple decided to embark on a day trip to Death Valley National Park. Their plan was simple: visit the park's most famous spots, Artist Drive, Devil's Golf Course, Racetrack Playa, and Badwater Basin, and return home. They prepared carefully, bringing enough water, camping gear, and food for the day. Their 2018 Subaru Forester, sturdy and reliable, was well suited to handle the park's dirt roads. Before departing, Alex, ever the experienced traveler, filled out a logbook detailing their planned stops, a routine safety precaution that would later prove crucial. Neither Alex nor Emily could have known that this seemingly ordinary trip would alter their lives forever and leave an indelible mark on the history of Death Valley National Park. The day began just as planned. After driving along the park's main road, they decided to turn onto Gold Valley Road, a 13-mile-long dirt trail meant for four-wheel drive vehicles. This secluded route, deep in the heart of the park, cut through the wilderness. The Subaru was built for such roads and they anticipated no problems. However, around 5:30 p.m., as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the silence of the desert was shattered by two sharp pops. Emily's heart sank as they got out of the car and discovered that the two tires on the passenger side had been punctured by sharp rocks. With only one spare tire, the situation quickly turned dire. The sun was quickly setting, coloring the rocks in eerie shades of red. They were now 22 miles away from the main road, deep in one of the most remote areas of the park, and there was not a soul in sight. The phones showed no signal and there was no water source or shade in sight, nothing that could help in this desperate situation. The barren landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, underscoring why this place had earned its grim name. Survival instincts kicked in. Alex, with his military background, began to assess the situation with methodical precision. They checked their supplies, a few liters of water enough to last for 3 days, some canned food, flashlights, and a basic survival kit. Emily spread out a map on the hood of the car, and Alex surveyed the surrounding terrain. The couple now faced a decision that would determine their survival. After much deliberation, they decided against retracing their steps. Instead, they plotted a route to Mormon Point via a mountain pass. It was a shorter path, but considerably more difficult and dangerous. As the evening wore on, they left a note in the car informing anyone who might find it that they had 2 flat tires and were heading for Mormon Point, with enough water for 3 days. They even used rocks to create an arrow pointing in the direction they intended to go. After settling in for the night in the car, they tried to conserve their strength. The desert's extreme temperature contrast took hold. While the heat of the day had dissipated, the cold of the night quickly set in. The next morning they were up at 4 a.m., the sky still littered with stars. They knew they had to move quickly to make it through the mountain terrain before the midday heat set in. The route to Mormon Point took them over a mountain pass on a marked trail, but the terrain left no room for error. The path wound through a canyon nestled between the steep slopes of the Black Mountains. The canyon's ancient cliffs, formed millions of years ago by geological forces, loomed overhead like dark sentinels. As they made their way deeper into the canyon, the trail grew narrower and more treacherous. The rock beneath their feet was a mix of metamorphic formations, making every step a calculated risk. Steep slopes and sharp rocks dotted the trail, and at times the path ran dangerously close to sheer cliffs. Even for experienced hikers like Alex and Emily, this was a serious challenge. As the sun began to rise, its heat creeping into the canyon, the pair reached an unexpected obstacle, a 70-foot waterfall that blocked their path. The rock face was a sheer vertical wall, an impassable barrier. It was a known climbing route that required specialized equipment, but Alex and Emily had no such gear. They were left with no choice but to make a decision that would change everything. Alex, with his military training, began to examine the rock face, looking for natural ledges to help him descend. Emily watched nervously, warning him to be cautious. Alex, however, was already descending. But as he made his way down, the unthinkable happened. He lost his footing. "What do you mean you're losing your footing?" Emily shouted, panic rising in her chest as Alex's voice strained through the air. "Be careful." But it was too late. Alex plummeted 70 feet to the ground below, and what happened next would forever haunt Emily. By some miracle, Alex was still alive after the fall, but he was badly injured. In the absence of cell service and miles from civilization, Emily was faced with a choice no one should ever have to make. The only way to reach him was through a narrow, dangerous crevice in the canyon, a path where any mistake could prove fatal. With no hesitation, driven by adrenaline and fear, Emily made her choice. She had to be there for him no matter what it took. With trembling hands and a racing heart, Emily began her descent. Every movement was a gamble, each step could be her last. But halfway down, disaster struck. She found herself trapped, unable to climb back up or descend further. With no other option, she made a desperate, reckless move. She let go. The fall was brutal. Her ankle twisted unnaturally, snapping with a sickening crunch. But in the chaos of survival, she barely felt the pain. Driven by a single thought to get to Alex, she limped the remaining distance. When she reached him, the grim reality set in. The fall had left Alex with injuries far too severe to survive. On the 4th of April 2021, in the blistering heat of Death Valley, Emily held Alex's lifeless body in her arms, the weight of his loss crashing down on her as the first wave of shock began to subside. She looked around, still trying to process what had just happened. She was alone, stranded on a narrow ledge in the middle of a steep canyon. The air was hot and thick, and her ankle, broken in the fall, throbbed painfully with every movement. Alex's body lay lifeless beside her, a stark reminder of the tragedy they had just endured. And ahead of her, the landscape offered no mercy. Another cliff, a 100-foot drop, blocked any further attempt to climb or move forward. Emily realized the grim truth: there was no way out. The first day was nothing short of a nightmare. Despair clawed at her, guilt consumed her thoughts, and endless what-ifs spiraled through her mind. Every time she glanced at Alex's still form, it was as though the pain of his death was amplified. She had lost him, and with him, any hope she had of escaping this hellish place. But there was something else. She couldn't afford to let those emotions control her, no matter how overwhelming. Survival was all that mattered now. Still, the weight of her grief made it nearly impossible to think clearly. With a forced effort, Emily began to assess her supplies. They had packed food the night before, and there was water, though not nearly enough for what lay ahead. There was a survival kit in her backpack, the only hope for a means of making it through this. Using what little she had, Emily worked quickly, stacking rocks to create a makeshift shelter, hoping to protect herself from the relentless heat of the sun and the biting cold of the desert night. Every movement was agony, the physical pain mingling with the emotional devastation of the situation. Time moved differently out here, hours stretched on forever. By around 2 p.m. every day, the sun would crest the canyon walls and the narrow ledge would transform into a blazing oven, the heat unbearable for hours on end. Emily, already exhausted, fought to stay conscious, trying to survive each torturous minute under the burning sun. With no way to shield herself, the heat quickly overwhelmed her. It was as if everything, even grief, was drowned out by her primal instinct to survive. She had to survive. But it wasn't just the heat that wore her down, it was the crushing isolation. She was completely dependent on the rescuers, but even that hope seemed faint. This place was so remote, so inaccessible, that the chances of being found seemed almost impossible. Still, Emily refused to give in. Every day she told herself that help would come, that they would find her. But sometimes when she said, "we," it was like the loss hit all over again, the emptiness and the realization that she was alone. The nights were even harder. As the temperature dropped, the darkness became a prison. The sounds of Death Valley echoed in the night, and the cold seeped into her bones. Alone in the pitch black, the world seemed distorted, nightmarish. Alex's body was a constant presence, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. But the thought of leaving him behind was impossible. He had been there with her, so close and yet now so distant. During those long, agonizing nights, Emily would speak to him, her voice a quiet whisper in the dark. She would tell him of her fears, her hopes, her desperate wish to survive, and how much she missed him. All she could do was wait and hope that someone would find them in the vast stone maze of Death Valley. 5 days passed like an eternity. Meanwhile, a massive rescue operation was unfolding outside the canyon. When Emily and Alex didn't return home by the evening of April 4th, their loved ones grew anxious. By April 6th, worry turned to certainty. Something had gone terribly wrong. Inyo County Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale search, bringing in multiple agencies, all working tirelessly. Search teams combed the area, checking every hotel, motel, and possible location. The California Highway Patrol spread the word, and the National Park Service, along with volunteers, worked day and night, covering a vast territory. On April 7th, the search expanded to every monument and landmark along the Death Valley Highway. They had a critical clue. Alex's logbook, filled out before the trip, offered a breadcrumb trail. The rescuers checked places like Artist Drive, the salt formations of Devil's Golf Course, and the mysterious Racetrack Valley, but every lead turned out to be a dead end. It wasn't until April 8th that a breakthrough finally came. During an aerial patrol, a pilot spotted a white Subaru Forester parked on Gold Valley Road, a remote dirt path not even on their original route. Inside the car, they found a note with critical information, flat tires and a 3-day supply of water. This discovery pointed the rescuers in the right direction. The operation entered a new phase, with every minute becoming more crucial. The next morning, just before dawn, the distant sound of engines reached Emily's ears. She could hardly believe it at first, but then it grew louder, unmistakable. A helicopter. The sound of the propellers growing nearer was the first real sign of hope in days. Emily, heart pounding, waved her makeshift signal as panic threatened to overwhelm her. Then, through the canyon's narrow walls, a U.S. Navy helicopter appeared. The moment the crew saw them, it felt like both a triumph and a terrifying challenge. The helicopter hovered over the canyon, but rescuing Emily was no easy feat. The turbulence from the chopper blades whipped through the canyon, tossing the rescuers from side to side. For 20 minutes, it seemed like a hopeless struggle, but finally they reached her. The hardest part was yet to come, getting her safely to the helicopter. Every movement had to be calculated, every step precise. Emily shut her eyes as she was secured in a stretcher, and as she was lifted into the air, she dared to look down. Below her, the vast expanse of Death Valley stretched out, the same treacherous landscape that had nearly claimed her life. Once at the hospital, doctors immediately began treating her broken ankle, and the decision to keep her shoes on during the ordeal turned out to be life-saving, as it prevented swelling and preserved her foot. But the emotional recovery would take far longer. Every time Emily closed her eyes, she was transported back to that canyon, to the moment everything changed. News of Alex and Emily's ordeal spread quickly, and the story of their survival touched the hearts of many, especially in the veteran community. Alex had dedicated his life after military service to helping other veterans, and his legacy continued after his death. His passing inspired the creation of the Alexander Lofgren Veterans and Parks Act, a bill introduced in Congress in honor of Alex. Less than 3 months after his death, the bill was passed, giving Gold Star families and veterans free lifetime admission to national parks and federal recreational areas. Alex's story, and the law that bears his name, stands as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light can emerge. His legacy now lives on, helping other veterans find healing through nature, just as he had done during his time in Afghanistan. This story isn't just about tragedy, it's about resilience, survival, and legacy. It makes us question how far we'd go for the ones we love and how unprepared we truly are for nature's challenges. Alex's death is not in vain, and his name, etched into the law, serves as a beacon of hope for others. What would you have done in Emily's shoes? Would you risk your life to save another, even when the odds seem insurmountable? This is a story that reminds us how even the worst tragedy can lead to something meaningful. If this story touched you, consider liking and subscribing. Your support helps the channel grow and improves the quality of content. Share your thoughts in the comments. What lessons did you take from this story? I'd love to hear your opinion. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your loved ones.